Good evening, folks. Welcome to another session from the Wise Asylum. Probably the most important session I've ever done. It's going to be rather horrifying for a lot. Some people are going to understand it. Some people are not going to understand it. But of course, if you've been following this channel for the last 4 years, you'll know we've covered a lot of different subjects. Law. We've covered history. We've covered all sorts of topics. Well, that's the law side. As you all know, I've constantly been seeking the root of the matter. What is it that's enabled this priesthood to take over the entire Western world? But not only the Western world. I mean, it controls the entire world. But we're Westerners, we're of a Christian culture, and we want to know, how the hell have we lost control of our estates? Well, we believe we've found the root of the matter now. We've found it, we understand it, we're quite happy that this is exactly what they've done and what they continue to do. And it is, I tell you now, horrifying. It's blasphemous, it's sick, it's absolutely disgusting, and it comes from the top, in every orifice. This has been the battle line that's been trying to take over everything. But ultimately, it comes down to us, in last, 5 or 6 generations, not paying attention, not being educated, and of course supporting and getting excited about the wrong things. So we have to take responsibility for that also in our time today. But anybody that comes on here, we're all seeking. We're seeking the truth. We want the root. Because until you find the root of the matter, you can't even begin to find the remedy. So we're content now. We've found it, we know it, we understand it, we can see it playing out in all the literature that I and others have studied. We do believe we've found the root of it, the cause of it, and it really is discerning, to say the least. But everything's conquerable, everything can be put right. It just needs effort, it needs comprehension, and obviously people working together for the right reasons. That's what it's going to take in order to at least pull back England, as it were, as a body of law. Because of course, as we can see now, the communists, through their broom Islam, are ever creeping to power in and on this nation under the corporate law of the UK. You know, the fake king and his moll, the queen, the Medici queen, they've sidelined England completely. They're not in any way, shape or form entertaining anything that may come before the courts or accept anything in relation to what is England. It's all about Scotland, the Scottish Rite, the garbage, the people that believe falsehoods because it serves them well. And again, not good. Same in America, Australia, in Canada, across Europe. Our nations have been usurped through contracts in the corporate, with the United Nations, with the European Union, all coming out of the second power to this empire, which would be the inner temple at the inner city of London. Now, you know, there's a lot going on today. You've got all the anti-Semitic stuff going on in America. Trump's claiming that once he gets in, he's going to make it so illegal to be anti-Semitic, he's going to offer up the death penalty. So you can see that the right side of everything, the right wing, is going to be just as terrible as this leftist communist system. But of course, it is the game that they have to get the communists in power first to so upset the natives of all these nations with the front, and that's political Islam, that war will be declared and the plan will move on swiftly. We're looking for a kick-off over there in the Middle East in order they can first sanction martial law in the Western nations, and as we've discussed many times, to try and conscript all the remaining white males. Essential if they're going to do or carry out the game that they're going to carry out, for the Northern Alliance eventually to come in and completely and utterly annihilate Islam. That's the plan. That's the plan put forward by Albert Pike in the 1800s in a letter to Mazzini, and we can see it playing out all around us. People say the protocols of the learned elders of Zion are untrue and that they were ruled fake in a court. Well, that's incorrect. They were ruled a forgery, and a forgery, of course, is a copy of an original. And if you want to reread those protocols, you will see that it is the 20th century in its entirety. So it can't be said to be fake. It's happened already, and now we're at what we might call the latter end of that agenda, as they have clearly now dismantled England as a nation in its laws and installed upon it a corporation called the United Kingdom. Okay, that's where all the power is riding now, in the corporate contract side of things. And as we've all learned, if we've endeavoured to understand this system, we don't seem to have any teeth anymore, because we're classed as dead, classed as absent, and we've tried all sorts of things in the past to get to the bottom of that. We've found instruments that do actually work within the corporate side of things, statutory or solemn declaration being one, conditional acceptance being another, because of course then you're playing in contract law, you're playing them at their own game. There are instruments that work, but ultimately they don't get you to the root of the issue, what it is that gives these powers that be the ability to ignore your offering up that you're not in person, etc., etc. So as I've said at the beginning, we're quite content now. We've found the root of it. It's shocking. It's outrageous, and I suggest you listen carefully. I'm going to put up, I've put it together as a PDF. We're going to go through it. It's not massive, but it's succinct. It gives it you as it is, and this is the mimic that's been created by this priesthood. Now, you know, I've said many times, it's not the Jews at the top of this, and I still hold to that. We've explored the tradition as known as Mithra or Zoroastrianism, because to my mind, from my studies over 30 years, that is the thesis that's overriding the entire biblical tradition. And because, of course, it has no bearing on the biblical tradition, it doesn't care which side wins, loses, drops out. It has no care about that. It has an agenda to wrap those three programs up in self-annihilation. And of course, you know, we're all aware of this idea that there's those that say there are Judahites but aren't, because of course the term Jews is erroneous in that it's an English translation and it's not found in the old biblical traditions. They were Judeans or Judahites, and this group fought 4 major wars against a group of people we class as the 10 tribes of Israel. And they fought horrendous wars of annihilation almost against each other. They hated each other that much. And the cause was the fact that the Judeans wanted and insisted that the Israelites took upon themselves their God. To which the Israelites said, no thank you, if we can't speak to a God on our own terms, we're not interested, we'll have our own king, thank you very much. And that was basically the foundation of the battles between those two cultures. We've explored the tale through the archaeological evidence that's available in relation to, did this go ahead, was this real? We've explored that, and it's still left wanting in truth. But we have to then go back to the biblical tradition, and we know for a fact that the Judeans as a group were captured and taken into captivity in Babylon. And of course, this is a Babylon that at recent time, as this captivity took place, had actually invited King Cyrus, who was a Zoroastrian, to take over full control of the Babylon system by the then existing Babylon elite. Some 60,000 Judeans were captured, taken into Babylon, and I think it was probably 50 to 60 years in, maybe 70 years in, King Cyrus actually emancipated a large section of those captive to go back to Palestine and build what would be classed as the Second Temple. The first, of course, being Solomon's Temple. And of course, if you understand how the Zoroastrian system works, then it gave itself a third position of arbitrator between any given two sides found anywhere on any landmass that the Zoroastrians, or particularly the Persians, which is what they are, had taken power by conquering. So naturally, it's pretty easy to see, and these are my studies have shown this, that this temple that was built in the Palestinian landmass by and under King Cyrus was obviously serving the Zoroastrians rather than what probably was the original Judean theology. So again, looking at it from that perspective, Zoroastrianism, or Mithraism as it is in its entirety, because it's way older than even the biblical tradition. And that's important for what we're going to look at shortly. It's very important that you get this picture in your mind so that you can fully understand that although Christians, Jews and Muslims are involved in this catastrophe that's going to take place, they're not either one of them ultimately sitting at the top of this tree. And in my studies into this schism, when I've looked into areas that have been taken over by these Khazarians, what you find is that before they gain entrance, there's always what they class themselves as a Sephardi in there first, running the show. And however, I would suggest they make that claim based on the fact that maybe the origins were in Palestine or Canaan, as it was. That's where they were. They were actually in Canaan, so perhaps Canaanites, but mixed up with the Babylonian priesthood, and that it's that priesthood that's run this show. The tradition of the Bible is pretty clear that the man that came and caused havoc, some say he was Judean, he could have been. The Druids over here in Ireland have always made the claim that they initiated the man that were preaching over in the Middle East, over in Ireland, and then sent him back to preach what we understand as the gospel. Now, Marcion created the first canon relative to the man and what he preached, and he completely and utterly sidelined the Old Testament, didn't include it in his canon, and only used the doctrine of Luke. And of course, the church, as it were, in Rome hadn't even been thought about at that time. But obviously, what was going on at that time was having a major effect in that area, enough eventually for Rome to create its own version. Now, I have mentioned an interview between Abe Finkelstein and a self-professed pastor from back about 2008, I think. I put it on the Facebook. I've also now put it on the website, just in case it gets took down off places. And I've also noticed that some of these other channels are actually now censoring what particular countries can see in relation to that channel. I found one today where I couldn't get onto a particular channel because it's classed as unfit for this area. So there's going to be a lot of that going on, so I'm going to start to put things on the website which are now available to everybody. You don't even have to be 18, which is what you have to be on YouTube if you want to watch this channel. So anybody that's under 18 to sort of get a head up with this data, you can just go now directly to the website, and as time moves on I will be putting them all up there. So that's that. Now I've lost my train of thought there. So anyway, it's shocking, ladies and gentlemen, it's shocking, but you will see and understand so much after we go through this tonight. And of course, now the mission, which is underway, is to understand how we present this in its inversion or reversion in the system in order to remove ourselves from what's to come. Now that's going to take some effort, and I don't take I'm not claiming that I am the supreme anything. There's a lot of people been involved in this game. There's a lot of people's efforts that have helped to come to these conclusions. One guy in particular I won't mention, because sometimes if you start to mention other channels, other people's, you can take on the karma to your channel, etc. And it's always better. But the guy will know who he is himself, who's committed a lot of effort and pretty much helped us all come to this final conclusion that we have actually found the root. But of course now the journey is about creating the correct paperwork in the correct format that we can then start to utilise this and remove ourselves rightly from this schism, this mimic of our culture and our theology by this priesthood. So I'll get this out of the way at this point, but that's going to take some serious effort on my part and other people that I have around that help me in this endeavour. Anybody that can help me in any way, shape or form financially, this is a good time to make sure that I can continue to operate as I have been, because your donations in the last year have been unbelievably helpful. It's kept me in the seat, doing the research, doing the study, and again, we've got to the point where we said the root has been found. I'm going to present it to you tonight, but we need to work out formats how we can use this properly and make it count. And you will understand what I'm talking about as we get into this stuff. So, in its essence, the origin of this system that's took over everything else and basically moved to completely and utterly relieve us of our estates, as its origin in Persia, Iran and Babylon. Okay, that's where the source is. And King Cyrus, as a Zoroastrian, was also the power in that area, and he was conquering everywhere. Okay, now King Cyrus is very important to a particular grouping of people that represent this priesthood. Of course, they might claim to be something, but obviously they're not, because the Semitism, of course, is a descriptive of a group of languages specifically spoken in the Middle East. And these groups that are claiming a lot of this today do not speak that language. So there's nothing anti-Semitic about this whatsoever. And as I've said, this isn't an attack on Jews. This is not an attack on Muslims or even Christians. This is me explaining what has happened to all three of our traditions that has got us in such a mess where we're about to start annihilating each other according to the plan that's been set up by this system that's outside of Christendom, Judaism and also Islam. And it's important that we start to understand this now. At least we can't say we didn't know, we weren't told. And then of course all actions after that from everybody that hears this stuff is on them. And that's the way this world works. Yep, we are responsible entirely for our actions, right down to everything that's going on in our lives. The closer you are to grasping that, then the closer you are to seeing reality and existing in the way we're supposed to be existing, as is described in Genesis 1, in the image of our creators, and not running around in the garden on our own egos, believing all sorts of nonsense, because it serves us well, gives us peace, gives us pets, means prizes. So Iran is the center, Iran is the core, and I just want to remind you of what we're dealing with here, and bearing in mind these families have their representation in China, in India, everywhere across the world. Indonesia, the Philippines, they are one. Together they make up what we've been told is the Committee of 300, the Olympians, and they're the ones running the show. This is where they come from.
What do you see as the biggest challenges in conservation?
The growing human population. Because where we are, there's nothing else.
And do you have views about what should be done about that?
Can't you guess?
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
Got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. You ready? You ready? You got me running, you got me running, got me running, got me running, got me.
I come to this house of the people to speak to you and all Americans.
Got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running.
Where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
Got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. You ready? You ready? You got me running, you got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running.
Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil.
You ready? You ready? Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. Got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. Got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. You ready? You ready? You got me running, you got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. either you were with us or you were with the terrorists.
Calling all the shots and I don't need nobody's permission. My own decisions, I don't want no opinions. Calling all the shots and I don't need nobody's permission. My own decisions, I don't want no opinions. Calling all the shots and I don't need nobody's permission. My own decisions, I don't want no opinions. Calling all the shots and I don't need nobody's permission. Take it, shake it, shake it, baby. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. Take it, shake it, shake it, baby. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. My own decisions, I don't want no opinions. Calling all the shots and I don't need nobody's permission. Take it, shake it, shake it, baby. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. My own decisions, I don't want no opinions. Calling all the shots and I don't need nobody's permission. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. You got me running, got me running, got me running, got me running. My own decisions, I don't want no opinions. Calling all the shots and I don't need nobody's permission.
So, there's your reminder. This is where it's coming from, right at the very top. And of course, I still use these people as fronts as well. I think there's something that we can't see, and you want to get a glimpse of that. And John Wick 4 is perfect. Although they've situated it in Arabia, because of course the Shia in Iran have took over the Sunni. So when you look at those little twists, you're getting to see the game. So before we start with that, let's see who's joined us tonight, as we normally do. Jerry says, Sean on the wise asylum, good evening Jerry, disciple of the Messiah, peace and grace for the Sean family, and peace to you sir, and good evening. Mark Oakford, evening Sean, good evening Mark, PY, EDM Sounds, evening all, evening Paul, Slipknot, alright Sean, Jackie and everyone, evening Slipknot. Juice says, hiya Sean, I'm actually early for a change. Oh, well that's good, good. Evening to you. Paul Sefton, good evening Sean, everyone, good evening Paul. Profile X, good evening. John Francis says, hello dears. Hello dear John, how's it going? June says, good evening Sean, evening to you June. Untitled says, greetings Sean, and in the here and now, and greetings to all the budding zygotes being in an early stage of growth. Good evening to you, Untitled. June says, Paul Sefton, good evening, okay, yep. Recycling Gestapo says justice will prevail, truth is all that matters. Well, that's all we seek on here. That's what we're after. It's not a war, this is truth seeking and then presentation of. The only people that don't like it are people that are telling fibs. Is that correct? I can't help what they see and how they see it, but at the end of the day, I can assure you, musical live streams is not war, it's seeking the truth. Cos says, hola, with the gigs on. Hello, Cos. Jace says, greetings. Hello, Jace. Over there in Oz. Early doors again. Good stuff. Glad to see you. John Francis says, good vid. And he always says that even before it started. Thanks for that, John. Jerry says, I believe you are correct, Sean. And into the Noahide, not down to the rainbow flag that people thought was the LB tube. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, quite right. They are moving our estates into the Noahide, and a big part of that, ladies and gentlemen, so if you haven't done the doodah, they can't get you in. They have to change your genetics to get you in the new arc 2x2. Yeah, it's about chromosomes, that. You have to change the chromosomes. All will be revealed. So if you haven't done the doodah, don't do the doodah. They've signed it off, or agreed it, let's say. 193, so one's missing. I think that's Japan. Sensible people. Mew says, hello, the usual crew. Welcome to newcomers. Hello, Sean. Hello, mods. Evening to you, Jeff. Jay says, hi, Jerry and Mew. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, Anthony says, how do, Sean, my good man? How do to you, Anthony? Untitled gives it the get the thumbs up going. Thanks for the comments on there. Nothing got removed. I was quite amazed. That's good. Either we're doing something good and they're not upset anymore because they know I'm not going to talk about what they don't want me to talk about because they get excited. Or, I don't know. So get that thumbs up it. Just whether you like it or not, just do it. You're going to like this anyway, believe me. Or you're going to despise it, let's say, first. But we have to absorb this in order we can understand what we're going to have to do. Profile X, Life That Makes Interesting book. When Scotland was Jewish, DNA evidence, archaeology analysis, migrations, public and family records show 12th century Semitic roots. Well, you see, the thing is, what we're going to look at tonight, we all begin as Jewish. Something happens that changes that. So it's a bit of a misnomer. It's just Scottish idiots always wanted to be better than English because they were too stupid to ever realise that actually the British Isles have been run from Scotland since 1066. Well, okay, since David I. I mean, you know, these are jocks that are just dumbasses and want to be better than everybody else because the Scottish writers told them they are. And they've watched that other fruit bat, Mel Gibson's, what's some call it? Well, that film. I mean, that's not historically correct. It's garbage. Robert the Bruce was a complete shithouse. And William Wallace, a bloodline. The whole historical concept that Mel Gibson puts out in his films is garbage. It's historically incorrect. So he's up to no good. He's operating for the Jesuit rather than the Catholic. But yeah, I've read all these books, Profile X. I mean, if you want to believe it, that's fine. That's fine. I don't really mind. But Anthony says, who you enjoyed, Mew? Any fish for the pot? Huh? Okay. Hope, he says. Hope you enjoyed, Mew. Any fish for the pot? Okay. Good sleep, thanks, blah, blah, blah. Michael Jr. says, hello, Sean, how do all? Hello, Michael. Nouveau Laredo, hi, everybody over there in England. Well, hello to you, wherever you are. Nouveau Laredo. What's that flag? I have to put gigs on for that. A black flag. Okay. John says, good vid again. Good on you, John. Where are we? PY, I just found your channel and subscribing number 25. Thanks, Sean. You have the best channel in all of England, as far as I can see. Well, if that's the case, it's because we don't fill your head full of fantasy and bullshit. We try and seek it out and tell it as it is. So thank you for that. Sean, you put this tune on your channel so we can share with this video. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at... I've got Bandcamp, I've got all these other things. The thing is with the music at the moment, I'm unable to produce them correctly because I don't have a big speakers set up. So I can't just set the bass correctly. So I don't know how it's sounding on bigger systems. So I'm at a disadvantage and I don't want to put stuff up there until I have it properly produced. So that's the only reason I haven't done that with these things. I still don't understand why these pricks are so toxic. They have all the money in the world and it's still not enough for them. It's not about money. They want the earth for themselves. Okay, there we go. Good evening, Sean. Good evening, folks. Says Gordy. Good evening to you, Gordy. Right, sit down, get your beverage going, and get ready to absorb the real horror story. Because this is what they've done. Okay. Right. image. Important you get this image in because it pretty much gives you the backdrop. So this is about calendars, ladies and gentlemen. So calendars, of course, then it's about dates. What do we all use every time we send a letter, write a letter, receive a letter? Is dates everywhere? Is there not? So we've gone through Genesis 1 and difference between Genesis 1 and the garden, which is Genesis 2, have we not? I'm not going to go into copious amounts of garbage about that. If you haven't been aware of what we've done, I've got videos on this channel specifically on that topic. Now, this system, the Anno Mundi calendar, which is classed as the Hebrew calendar, okay, Genesis 1, in their system, remember this is their system, their mimic, how they've overturned the Western system in its entirety without us seeing it. So in their system, Genesis 1 is only afforded to the time you are in the womb, because you're not in the world, and thus, at that point, you are in the kingdom of God, because God has created the baby in the womb, the fetus. The mother creates the placenta. So the mother doesn't create the child. God creates the child. The mother creates the placenta. Okay? Now that's biological fact anyway. But we're talking basically about their system. This is how they're seeing it. So 0 to 1 is the womb. So conception or fertilization is the beginning of this calendar as it's referenced to you. Alright? Now Genesis 2 begins at birth. Okay? At born. Because the Christian calendar, Julian and Gregorian, starts at 1. Does it not? So it doesn't incorporate what the priesthood class as Genesis 1 while you're under God. And in Genesis 1, it's all about chromosomes from your ancestry. 2 by 2. Grandma and granddad got together, great grandma and granddad got together, etc., etc. So that's classed as an ark, is the womb. And the symbolism of 2 by 2 comes in the fact that it always takes 2 to make a 1. So it's dealing entirely in chromosomes, genes, the gene pool in that ark. Okay? But then as soon as you're born, what happens? Right. So the baby's born, and then something follows after that. The placenta. Okay? And this we've looked at this before. But again, we don't have to go into that because it's pretty self-explanatory in this system that we're looking at now. So in their system, you're only under God or chosen by God while you're in the womb. The moment you're born, your mother basically abandons the living side, not the breathing side, which is the baby, but the living side. Now also, while you're in the womb, you're also classed in this system as the Jesus, i.e. the Son of God. Right? So you're only classed as that point in there. And the mother creates that part because they're dealing with that as the placenta. So Jesus is the middleman. So for you to be born, there has to be a middle system, which is the placenta. Okay? And it's classed as the middleman. And remember, this is their system, ladies and gentlemen. This is how they've captured us. So the moment you're born and the placenta comes out, the mother abandons the placenta, or Jesus. They take it and pin it on the cross. Or they take that as the deposit, okay, for their financial system. Okay, so you're born, you've abandoned the Son of God. Yeah, because you've registered it. There's a registration kicks off in Christendom, in the temples of the Knights Hospitallers, the hospitals. Okay, you didn't realise you were in a temple, did you? Now in the garden, right, is the count from 1, when you're born, to the current date, which now is 2024. Okay? So that is classed as the garden in this system. And in that garden, Jesus has been left behind and put on the cross. That's the placenta. Because when it comes out, it's classed as living, but it's not breathing. There's two distinctions biologically between living and breathing. Okay? And it's classed as king of the Judahites. And this is how they capture the property. But because you've abandoned it, they have to put it into a trust. Because you've abandoned it, you're not there anymore to look after it. They create a trust and operate it for you. Now, okay? So that's the garden. So Genesis 1, you're in the womb. When you get into the garden, you're in the world. Okay? Now, this is the next part of importance. That from 2024, in accordance to the Anno Mundi, which to date, right now, is a count of 5,784. When you acknowledge your dates and systems in the garden, so up to 2024, and any date you've used in between from your birth, is classed as in the past. According to... So that's in the past, according to this system. So to be here present, as man, male, whatever you want to call it, or God's chosen, you would have to be in the year 5784. There's your present, there you're in the past. And when you're in the past, in finance, you are borrowing from the future. And therefore you're in debt. Are you not? And that debt is pinned on the cross, and a trust has been created in order they can administer that trust, that debt, because you've abandoned it. You're lost. You're lost at sea, because in the womb is the waters. That's the kingdom of God, the waters. You're not coming onto land when you're born. Remember, this is their system. Okay? Their system. So in the present moment, it's considered the point, right, of 5784 is held by the Mithrian cults under the Jesuits. So it's the Jesuits that are running this. And that leaves the Hebrew present as a subset of Mithra. So, that said, the Hebrew Bible is the count afforded to everything we think we know. But when you get into the Zoroastrian system, the Mithraic system, it's older than the Anno Mundi. This is where I'm saying, off this diagram, that even at 5784, afforded to the Judaic system, because it's the Mithrian Zoroastrians running this, because of the captivity, they've got a longer count. So to be in their present, it's further to the right. And this is how the Zoroastrians have captured the Jews, the Christians and the Muslims. As subsets of their calendars, each of which are in the past and are borrowing from the present, indebtedness. Okay? So that is the image to give you a grasp on what we're about to look at now. So now we're going to support that by looking at some data. Now, this is a dialectic and it's based on scientific terms from various sources. And it says the terms breathing, being and living being are often used interchangeably, but they can have slightly different connotations depending on the context. A breathing being typically refers to an organism that exchanges gases with its environment through respiration. This process usually involves inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide. Although in some organisms, such as certain bacteria, respiration may involve different gases. Breathing is essential for many organisms to obtain the oxygen needed for cellular respiration, which is the process by which cells produce energy. Now, trees do it the opposite way, don't they? They take in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Okay? So that's an example of the breathing being and the difference in gases, etc., and mechanics by which they're intaking and exhaling, as it were. On the other hand, a living being is a broader term that encompasses any organism that exhibits the characteristics of life. These characteristics typically include organisation, metabolism, growth, adaptation, response to stimuli, reproduction, and evolution. And a placenta, when it comes out, has a pulse. It adapts, it grows, yeah? It's responsive to the stimuli of the fetus while in the kingdom of God, as it were. Okay? So Jesus is the middleman there. Yeah, for the fetus to grow. That's how they see it. For example, certain organisms, hang on a minute. While many living beings do indeed breathe, there are some exceptions. For example, certain organisms such as anaerobic bacteria can live and thrive without oxygen and therefore do not engage in respiration as conventionally understood. In summary, while all breathing beings are living beings, not all living beings necessarily breathe. The term breathing being emphasizes the importance of respiration in many organisms, while living being encompasses a wider range of characteristics associated with life. So, 0 to birth is 1 year. Christianity begins at 1, thus is not inclusive of the 0 to 1 timeline. Christianity uses the Julian and Gregorian calendar, which has a 14-day difference between the two counts. As such, they are one and the same. So basically, whether you're on the Julian, which is the Orthodox, so the Eastern Orthodox still uses the Julian, as opposed to the Western Christendom, which changed to the Gregorian in the 1500s. However, the fact that there's only a 14-day difference, they're still classed as within the garden as a count, because they're using the 1 up to the present 2024. You get that? Now, so some of these brackets are my additions, some, okay, so just to enhance this. It says that now, the number 5, the 5th element, okay, is unseen and hidden. It's the magic, the aether, or pent. So pent and gram, if we get them together, means message. So pentagram symbolises the hidden message. So when you see the symbolism of the pentagram in the occult, they're basically representing the hidden and 5th element that you're not supposed to see. But it's the magic that pulls their system together. Okay? So there's the occultic aspect of pentagram. The Gregorian calendar, there is no 0 in this scheme. Thus, the year AD 1 immediately follows the year 1 BC. And there, you can get that from Wikipedia. These links will be accessible on the PDF when I put it up. Anno Mundi, this year 5784, began on the 15th September 2023 and ends on the 2nd of October 2024. And is taken from the year 0. Okay, so that's inclusive of the time in the womb. So it's conception that they're dealing with, which is why Christianity is classed as not having, you couldn't be chosen. So in their system, we cancel ourselves out the minute we're birthed and we're counting from 1. Our Jesus or middleman is put on the cross, abandoned, they take it into trust, and because it represents the chromosomes within that kingdom, the womb, the kingdom of God, they've taken your inherent right to land, your estate. They're holding it in trust for you. Okay, do you get that? So it's all about chromosomes, biology, but specifically in the womb. And of course the placenta holds, does it not, your chromosomes and those of your mother and of your father. So the gene pool is inside the womb. And the middleman, what they class as the Jesus, holds that, they capture it, it's abandoned. That's how they can claim ownership to your estate and hold it in trust. The Christian timeline 2024 by the world calendar Anno Mundi is 3,760 years in the past, or frozen on the cross. One is said to be using something of the present in the past. It is classed as a debt to the future. Okay? To the time 5784. So you're not in the present, you're borrowing from the future, which is today 5784, because we are presenting 2024. Do you get that? Same with the Muslims, it's the same gig. But we're not here to discuss the Muslims. This is specifically about how our culture has been taken over without us recognising the fact, or being able to get to the crunch of it. The Pope is both head of state, so that's politics, and father to the church, so that's the ecclesiastical. So both the ecclesiastical and political jurisdictions are held within one man. He is the father and the mother in the fiction. He's the vicar of, is he not, the Christ or Jesus that's on the cross. Yeah? And because of the gene pool in the placenta from the mother, this is where you get in the obsession with the mother and child in this system. Right? And it says celebrating birthdays and born days using dates afforded to the Julian or Gregorian calendar fixes you on the cross. So every time you're doing this, you're reasserting that you're fixed on the cross. You're going back to being an infant. You've grown for a year, but then you've gone back. I've said always I stopped counting it at the age of 22, and I meant it. Yeah, I don't care about birthdays. I couldn't care a toss. And I stopped counting, me personally, at 22. All dates would have to be within the Anno Mundi or creation of fertilization. So you'd have to work out what your fertilization time and then incorporate it into the Anno Mundi 578 count if you were to present yourself as here present, not in the past. You know, when you go into court, are you here in person? You'd be, no, I'm here present. I'm whole and complete. You digging? Can you see why these terms now that you've heard, you've studied and read in times past, where they come from? The Anno Mundi calendar, Anno Mundi from Latin, in the year of the world. Who controls the world? Exactly, Satan. So this is how Satan's captured everybody. But more importantly, your land rights afforded to you in Genesis 1, dominion, your dominion rights, are captured by this wizardry, this occultism. The womb is classed as the Old Testament and represents God's kingdom and the growth of the man, and thus from 0 to 1, we are God's chosen. Zygote is also another term used biologically in that process in the womb. Christianity begins at 1 and is therefore not an organism of the chosen. It is a creature of the world, the Goyim. The Christian calendar is classed as a subset of the Hebrew Anno Mundi and is classed as not being in the present. So I know I'm repeating it, but you need to understand this. In essence, to claim the Christian calendar, or indeed any calendar, including the Hebrew, is to leave behind and turn you back on the timeline of God's kingdom. And perhaps the parable, the kingdom of my Father is within, means exactly that. The kingdom of my Father is within the womb. Yeah, it's all metaphors when you get into the Gospels and all the theological doctrines, metaphors. Yeah, so if we take on any calendar, we cannot ever be in the present. None of the calendars use the term today. Do they? Could we date a document present? Are you present, I would suggest. If we are not present because we are in the past or lost at sea, we are away. A trust is created for someone to look after something on behalf of someone not present. Isn't that correct? We cannot ever use a birth date in that respect, because then we're sanctioning the birth certificate, which is the evidence of the pinning to the cross of the middleman. Yet the son of the father, of the mother, the chromosomes. I hope you're keeping up. The amnion is the innermost membrane of the extra embryonic or fetal membranes of amniotes, whatever, surrounding the embryo or fetus. Also the Eucharist. So my story, the mystery. Again, fifth element. Amnion, traditionally the term amnion has been assumed to derive from ancient Greek, little lamb, diminutive of amnos, lamb. What do they call Jesus in the traditions? The Lamb of God. The membrane in which we exist in the womb, including the placenta, is classed as the Lamb of God. Within the abandonment of the membrane, it is said to be a sacrifice by the mother. The idea is, by no longer remembering about the thing abandoned, it becomes a member of the world in REM. But it's classified as the kingdom of your origin, or the 0 to 1 timeline, while in the womb. So the kingdom of your origin, the kingdom of the God, becomes abandoned, and that becomes in REM for this trust system. That through the abandonment, it is taken into custody of the agents of the world symbolized by Christianity and is given a surname. And the church, through the Pope, in a motu proprio, no, actually it wasn't a motu proprio, it was just a letter, made it clear that the surname belongs to the church. It doesn't own it, it belongs to the church. We've done this in previous videos. That which creepeth from below is a definition of the surname, okay? It could also be the foundation of the Popish claim to be the vicar of Christ and the claim to the world and why he holds power over you. The amnion is the blood of Christ. Because of course they cut the placenta off, leaving a third of the baby's blood in the placenta, unless you stop them doing that. You need to stop that and make sure that the third of the blood in the placenta comes back into your baby. Now remember, this is the mimic they've created, ladies and gentlemen, in order to bedazzle us into thinking we're operating and accepting the culture that we've been brought up with, when in real terms they're operating from a commercial side, and this is what they're talking about in their system. The membrane or placenta cut from us becomes the deposit into the world in REM, and as the Lamb of God, Jesus becomes the middleman, the King of the Jews or Judahites, because of course Jews as a term was never used in the days that the biblical traditions were created. So 0 to 1, therefore, is hung on the cross. So King of the Jews is that time in 0 to 1 in the womb, and then he's hung on the cross. X marks the spot. And X is important as well when you get into commerce. The placenta is a fallen angel, or it could be said to be a fallen angel. And after that it takes place and you're born into the world, the baby is said to be a fallen man. Right? The placenta comes out second to the baby and is therefore said to be the second coming. So the second coming of Jesus in this system is the overriding of you, man, by this thing pinned on the cross. And that's how they're going to shove you into the Noahide. So this is why in the Middle East they have this obsession with this coming Messiah He's not what you think he is. He's their Messiah, and it's their proof of full control of every single estate in the West. So I don't care if you're a Mason, I don't care who you are. This is what they've done to you. This is what they've done to your offspring. It's what they did to your past generations. And remember, I've said there's a demarcation between original Rome and whatever it became after it became Solomonized, pressed into the Western Aryan Rome after the Crusades, and maybe just before even. The membrane or placenta, it was also hang on. Jesus, the amnion, the fish symbolism, comes in the fact the placenta was born in the water. They take the lower form of you and place it in the public pool. Now this is important. Public pool, that's water, is it not? And you ignorantly identify as it, do we not? The lowest common denominator evidenced in the birth certificate. So the birth certificate is evidence, the lowest common denominator of this system, which is your gene pool presented in rem in the public pool, in trust, administered by the agents of, ultimately, the Vatican system. And remember, the Jesuits, they weren't accepted by the church originally because it was known by some that they were actually part of what was the Illuminati before the Bavarian Illuminati. So I would suggest that the Jesuits' true role originally was to subvert the Catholic Church, and by putting itself up and at the service of the Vatican in order to subvert the Reformation is how they managed to get in the church itself, and that they've always had, at the elite level of it, their own agenda. The Black Pope. Doesn't mean all the Jesuits of the day were into that. They were obviously reckoning that they were still operating according to their own theology. But Malachi Martin gives you an insight into that when he says that his own order, which was the Jesuits, was not operating in accordance with the tradition that he'd accepted when he entered it. So, in essence then, the lowest common denominator evidence the birth certificate. What's happening there is you are recorded, i.e. the cord is cut, there's a separation, but they record your placenta, which has got your gene pool in it, with the mother, the Holy Mother as they use it, in the mother matrix, which is the public pool. Does that make sense? Now, symbolism. Again, back to this demarcation between what was originally the Aryan Western Church and what became the Eastern Church after the Crusades. Because the cathedrals that were built post 1066, previous to that 909 AD, when the Carolingians took over the monasteries in Western Europe, took it over from the Merovingians. These cathedrals, in my opinion, were a bit creepy, the Gothic side of it. And of course, what does it show when we look at these cathedrals as far as the entrances go? It's pretty clear that they're a vagina with the clitoris. And thus we have the Vesica Pisces. Yeah, it's symbolic of the vagina, or in their game, a portal, a stargate. There it is. So we really have to understand that there's a massive demarcation time between the old Western Aryan Church and what was and became the Solomon Church from the east and pushed over the west. Mother does not create the baby. And it doesn't. That's conception. That's where God comes into play. God does in the womb. The matrix, the mother creates the amnion, which is abandoned and placed upon the cross as the debt recorded in the date. The Holy Mother Church of the Heavenly Father. So that's the matrix, the financial matrix that they've used. So MA equals mother and son. Mason equals mother's son, widow's son, godless. This is where there's no father involved with the placenta side of thing, and why it's obsession with simply mother-son symbolism. And the Masons do claim to be the widow's son. Do they not? And the Masons, as we've looked at, are the fifth science. They're the builders of these systems for them. But because the Jesuits took the Masons over, then everything that the Masons have done have been on behalf of the Jesuits. And as I've said before, it looks to me like the Masons themselves, as a body of men, who's being scapegoated. Because of course the Jesuits are the architects of this system that's taken over Western Christendom. Yeah, so Ma equals mother, and son, of course, Ma's son. Mother's son, widow's son, without a father. God the Father. Is this making sense to you, ladies and gentlemen? Because this is how they're operating, and why you can do so much, but you don't get reversion. So it is the birth certificate that's the problem. It's the dates as well that's the problem, because you're never here present. You're in the past, you're a debtor, and they're administering the estate. But the trust. Now, matrix, late 14th century, matrix, uterus, womb. From Old French, matris, womb, uterus, and directly from the Latin matrix, genitive matrices. Pregnant animal, in Latin, womb. Also source origin from mater, genitive matris, mother, see mother. Mother doesn't create the baby, God does. Mother creates the placenta, the amnion. Can you see why they've got this obsession with your gene pool and the mother? Pinned to the cross, they have it. That's how they've got your, and as I said again, just to repeat, the gene pool in the womb is classed as your dominion rights in Genesis 1. Once it's abandoned, that's where they're making this claim. They're capturing it, holding it in custody, if you will. It's on bail. Yeah? And therefore etymology will be a link for you to check it out for yourself. A mystery is a Christian sacrament, specifically the Eucharist. Eucharist being the placenta, the mystery, the Holy Spirit. You seeing this? The fifth element. Yeah, I'll just take you back up to that. The number 5 represents the fifth element. It's unseen, it's hidden. It's the magic, the ether, or pent and gram means message. Pentagram symbolizes the hidden message. So pent means hidden. Gram is message. The hidden message, the Holy Spirit. Unseen, hidden, but magic. Because it gives them everything they want, and you haven't got a clue. Now, in REM is a technical term used to designate proceedings or actions instituted against the thing. Right? And that thing in this particular case is the placenta. So in REM is a technical term means to designate proceedings or actions. So once something goes in REM, it gives them, didn't we say before, this entire system is based on, it's designated and prescribed. That's where their power comes. And that equates to the only power they have is on assumption and presumption. Okay? So the assumption and presumption by us is proven when we rock up this person with the name, as we start using dates of birth, etc., etc. The assumption and presumption that we're on the cross, they need to look after and administer our estate, is secured because the placenta is in REM. Your dominion rights through your chromosomes and your genetics in Genesis 1 have been abandoned. Are you seeing that? And I'll read that again. It says, in REM is a technical term used to designate proceedings or actions instituted against the thing. In this case, the placenta. But in the legal system, it's whatever it is they're dealing with. So it could be property, it could be anything, yeah? In contradistinction to personal actions, which are said to be in personam. Now this is why they have to serve you with paperwork. But first you have to identify as the person. So they can serve you paperwork because you've identified as the person. In personam. Do you understand that concept now? There you have a link to further expand that for yourself. An action in REM is a proceeding that takes no cognizance of owner. So any actions they take under this in REM system is a proceeding that doesn't take any notice whatsoever of the owner of the thing. So that's property, etc. Car, you know, all these things. Your house, your offspring. Yeah? Can you see where this is starting to make sense now? So an action in REM is a proceeding that takes no cognizance of owner but determines rights in specific species. So that's property against all of the world. So that's everything that they can determine is in the world, is in the public pool. Okay? They've already determined owner's rights mean nothing. You've not come in that sense because we own nothing. Except what we create. The Hebrew calendar. So when they're talking about the world, they're specifically talking about the timestamp Anno Mundi, the Hebrew calendar. That is the world in these terms. Yeah, so anytime you hear the world, they're talking about that timestamp. 05764. That is the world, according to the Hebrew Anno Mundi. As I've said, personally, I think there's one off, and this is where your Zoroastrians that captured the Judeans back in the day, and then allowed them to build the second temple, that the man came to demolish. Because it weren't right. It wasn't of the tradition of that area. It had become something else because it had come out of Babylon. Is it making sense? Yeah? Now. So, I'll read that again. An action in REM is a proceeding that takes no cognizance of owner but determines rights in specific species or property against all of the world. So species is living things, isn't it? Cattle, everything, microbe, everything, nature, including us. And it's classed as property because it's in the world pool, the public pool. Because they've stolen our dominion rights through the chromosomes that they take from us in the placenta. Yeah? Against the world is equally binding on everyone. So the world calendar is equally binding on everyone and everything. Right? That's what they're saying there. So an action in REM is a proceeding that takes no cognizance of owner, but determines rights in specific property against all of the world, equally binding on everybody. So that world, that system they've got, Satan's world, is binding on every single thing down here, regardless. It is true that in a strict sense of the term, proceeding in REM, the thing or res, so that's what's in the res, held or deposited in the trust. So the trust is, the res is what's in the trust. Your dominion rights, and therefore everything you might claim to own, is res in the trust they've created. So I'll read that again. It is true that in the strict sense of the term, proceeding in REM, the thing or res held in or deposited in the trust, is one taken directly against property, and as for its object, the disposition of property without reference to the title of individual claimants. In other words, it is a pool, a sea, a holy sea. The masses as a pool of water, the black mass, Christ's mass. Also, it can be seen as the Leviathan or sea monster because the placenta has no spine. Okay, read that again. The masses as a pool of water, the black mass, the Leviathan, a sea monster, the placenta has no spine. But in a larger, more general sense, the terms are applied to actions between parties, where the direct object is to reach or dispose of property owned by them or some interest therein. Such are cases commenced by attachment against the property of debtors or instituted to partition real estate or foreclose a mortgage or enforce a lien. Right? So from this system gives them all those assumed, prescribed and designated powers. So this is why they set liens against you. This is why they can take your house off you through a mortgage. But remember, you're in contract when you do these. Yeah? So they can break up your real estate, etc. and foreclose on mortgages and enforce liens. But we can all do this once you've got reversion. Now, speaking in terms of the thing, the placenta, encapsulating your biology, which it does, you're inside this, remember. When you're in the womb, this amnion surrounds the child, the baby, doesn't it? You're in it, the kingdom of God, in these terms that they're using. And then you abandon the kingdom of God. They pin it on the cross. Hold your genetic chromosomes, dominion rights to land in trust because you've abandoned it. And the baby's now fallen. Your mum and dad were fallen before grandma, granddad. Animals 2 by 2. Into the womb's ark. You're digging this scene. Is this making sense to you? Speaking in terms of the thing, placenta encapsulating your biology, and that of father mothers, you can be confused with another. So, you know they confuse things in the past because there's 3 gene pools in that mix. Father, mother and yours. Because yours are a mix of the 2. Now if they're fanning around with your infant in the womb, they're adding or taking away or confusing things again. Especially if you're doing the doodah. Are you with me? So they can start to confuse things in their system due to the fact that the amnion encapsulates your biology and that of father and mother. So they can confuse you with each of the Trinity if they so choose. The social contract. So this is where you get into the social contract idea and the rules that are within it. Alright, so to understand that, you've got to start to go back to the social contract to understand what it's talking about. The social contract. We are bonded by the debt. Now, when you consider debt, there's only two ways it's absolved, isn't it? It's either forgiven by pardon, or it's paid, settled. To settle a debt, it's either forgiven or it's paid. And so we're all bonded by that debt until it's either forgiven or paid. In the strict sense of the term, a proceeding in rem is one which is taken directly against property, or which is brought to enforce a right in the thing itself. Actions in which the court is required to have control of the thing or object on deposit. And they use the term bailment, don't they? So if they get hold of you in custody, you may be bailed out of the custody, but you've still got control over you for any actions they consider are due in order to settle the debt. Yeah? So if you've no money, you're going to prison because that's how they're making money, because they own G4S, Serco, the courts, they're all making money. That's how they'll pay your debt. They'll decide how much you're owing and then decide what punishment you're going to get, affording, that will give them that settlement. That's prison, not jail. Jail's land, prison's sea. So we never get back on land. Remember that. We're always lost at sea. And it's getting back on the land that we're trying to do. And in which an adjudication made as to the object which binds the whole world. The anno mundi. To bind is bondage. Is it not? The bond. So you've all heard the word bonds, fund about securities, liens and all this malarkey. So it's bonds are binding. So government print money and then buy bonds. Thus binding that bond to the money they've printed. And it's debt. I mean, this system can go on forever because they can just keep printing money. Because money's worthless, as long as we believe and accept that it has value, then it has value forever and ever, amen. But they're playing with interest, aren't they? They're playing with, what's that? They're playing with, what do they call it? I forgot what they call it. You know, when prices go up. They've got all these little games to play to bedazzle us. That the simple fact that they're printing money means it could go on forever. They're binding that system in these bonds that are connected to other instruments and powers that they've given themselves to attack that thing and make it look like, oh my God, it's going tits up. Because money's not important to them, save for the fact that it's binding our dominion rights of our estates to this system. Does that make sense? Untitled Social Mortgage Dead Pledge Pool. Yeah, precisely. Usury, so solving this, exactly. Inflation and variable. These terms, these systems that they've invented to bedazzle us. That the simple format of print money, we've all got plenty. All of a sudden, no, it's binded to these other apparatus that they control. Can you see what I'm saying there? You know what I mean? So they are not yet. And simply not the interests of the parties in the proceedings. So the interests of the parties are not really... I'll read that again, shall I? Because even I've got myself lost in that, because I've papped on. But in the strict sense of the term, a proceeding in rem is one which is taken directly against property, or which is brought to enforce a right in the thing itself. Well, they have all the rights, the administration rights, don't they? And the beneficial rights. We're running up and down as trustees. A right in the thing itself, actions in which the court is required to have control of the thing or object on deposit. They use the term bailment. It has been bailed. And in which an adjudication made as to the object which binds the whole world. The anno mundi. To bind is bondage, the bond, and simply not the interest of the parties in the proceedings. And that comes from a book, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, 1762, page 270 to 271. Social Contract, that's what this is, okay, the book. I've put your link up there for it. And on page 61 of this Social Contract, it says, the public person thus formed by the union of all of the persons. So when they put you in the public pool with all the other persons, there's a union, a public pool, right? There's no individuals anymore. You're in this public pool that they're administrating. Economies, banking, all is based on this power they've given themselves. The public person thus formed by the union of all other persons was once called the city. Now, cities began in Sumeria, right? City gods. So the emperor, or the Uber Anunnaki, whatever the hell they were called, the Neteru, as the Egyptians called them, his family would be placed in cities, and they were called city gods. Right? This is where it all comes from. And so he's saying that in the past, these systems, these Babylonian systems, before, that the public person thus formed by the union of all of the persons, the public pool, was once called the city. So a mayor of a city, Sadiq Khan, he's acting as a city god for the public pool of every estate and trust that exists in London. Same in Manchester. Can you see why they're moving everything to city mayors, police and crime commissioners, chief constables? So that's the corporate side taking over the land side, the common law side. And people haven't paid attention. Now, it says citizens originally of Babylon, in which each city had a city god. That's my word. Today called a republic. A body politic. So even a republic is still a union of all persons. A city run by a city god. And I've said before, we've been under the time of man for a long time. This idea of gods, that's ancient stuff. They've gone. As the ruling bloodline character explained in relation to the Anunnaki or the Neteru, gone. They've gone. They're not here. This is man's taken on board what was created in ancient times and passing it on and giving themselves the power. I mean, we've just looked at that selection of elites. They're not lizards. They're not aliens. They're men and women. That's what they are. So you can go off into the fancy if you want that MK Ultra's created and NASA, if you like, that Elon Musk is creating for you with this idea that they're going interplanetary. You can't get past the fucking firmament. You certainly can't get anything to survive through the Van Allen belts. And I've just watched something today where he did a speech at Yale. So obviously they're not very smart, these Ivy League geezers that are going to these universities, are they? They're pretty thick if they're sucking that shite up. It's just all wind and piss fantasy to bedazzle you, so you never get to the truth of the matter. And so there's a link to that book. There's a PDF. Ergo, when they take the property into custody, they place it in the public pool of water, the Holy See, becoming the global John Doe. Meaning we are all guilty of everything due to our biology or water, law of the sea. So they can arrest anybody for anything, because your rights to dominion your chromosomes are in the public pool mixed up with everybody else's. This is why they can attack races and say, you've been demarcated in the Noahide. You're idolaters, we're going to kill the lot of you. Not because of your value and your worth and your actions down here, but because you're part of this pool. Take fucking note of that, people of religion. Take note of that. Meaning we're all guilty of everything due to our biology or water, law of the sea, being within the pool of which the same biology, DNA, is recorded from the placenta. So Christianity as a whole is classed as idolatry in this new system, whether you are or not. Because you're all in the same gene pool, run by the same city god, the 21st degree Noahide judge, Prussian knight, Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Goyim judging the Goyim. You digging that? Now when you know what the theology is of these people, there won't be a Goyim left. It's not the plan. They're only there to serve until they don't. When they say they want the earth to themselves, that's what they mean. Okay? So there is no division in these gene pools. We are one with the placenta in their records. And it explains the obsession with collecting our DNA, does it not? And now they got facial recognition, cementing your face to this placenta. You getting this? The perpetrator or person of interest is guilty, but the placenta took no part in the action. But they have a match, and you, under joinder, are under the law of the sea, the court of public opinion. State your name for the record. You've got your facial recognition. But the doodah changed the DNA or chromosome continuum in order they can take your estate into the Noahide Ark, a new trust system. They become God. Consider that all our ancestors came together 2 by 2 and formed a new life in the womb or ark. Everything they do is a mimic. The flood can be seen as the mother's waters, which break and we land. The ark rests, out we come. It's a mimic. The thing becomes a part of the world, the placenta. But our biology, the man, began at 0. The baby is classed as an evolutionary due process being. The fruit at the end of the stem, the umbilical cord, or the product of God's creation. First in time, perhaps the record, time being the world, remember, the Anno Mundi. We existed before the church got involved. But we don't ideas that, do we? We're on the Gregorian, the Julian. We're in 2024. We're in the past. We're not here in the present. And we keep cementing that each time we have a birthday. You're done. We're back to infant. We get to walk back to infant again, declaring it. Birthday cards, prezzies. That's why they've done it. Women, check yourself. No. Right. Now, a few, just giving you more of an idea of this concept in terms that you've heard many times. Equity. So equity begins at 0. If you forego the lamb, you relinquish the equity, which is placed in trust while you exist in the fiction. In the past, lost, dead, missing. You lose the ability to pay anything in the greater fiction. So you can't pay it by natural means. You've got to pay it with solid. Yeah, so you've lost the ability to pay everything in the system. Fertilization to the last breath is equity. So if you're not claiming Anno Mundi from 0 to 5764, you're not claiming here present from fertilization to the last breath, which is now. But then, of course, when you die, because you died at the beginning. Can you see that? Equity is justice according to natural law. So you're not getting justice, are you, in this system, because you're not bringing your equity? Are you? Do you get that now? So you're never going to get justice. Because in their system, equity only exists in that time period, 0 to 1. And that's where natural law exists. Therefore, that's the only place justice exists. Yeah? Maxims of equity. And there's a link. Equity will not assist a volunteer. And what do we all do? We're volunteering to be the fallen man. The sacrificed Jesus. We're volunteering. Equity will not exist a volunteer. And that's a maxim of equity, ladies and gentlemen. Now, actors' equity. 1933, so we're back to this 1933. Originally 1913 when they got the central bank in America, but they didn't actually federalise the system until 1933. Now, the term federal means covenant with God. Justice according to natural law, or justice according to your decision, which is either from fertilization or within the Christian timeline. You are deciding. And most cases we're volunteering to be from 1 to 2024 in the past, in debt. Missing. 0 to 1 is the real equity. 1, the act of the character began. So 0 to 1 is real equity. And when it gets to 1 up to 2024, from 1, that's when the act of the character began. So we began to act as the character, even though we were still babies. Mum and Dad made sure we acted as the character. To 2024. So 1 to 2024, that's the act. Yeah? And actors' equity. Ain't any. Equity will not assist a volunteer. So from 1 to 224, your equity was held in trust. So you've been an actor and a volunteer for that every time you hit the state for anything. So justice according to natural law, according to Webster's 1A. Now, I was unable to find this, specifically myself, because it came out of a book. So they haven't transferred Webster's dictionary book form onto the internet. Be aware of that in general when you're ever looking for definitions. But in Webster's as a book, it said, we are speaking of the prodigal son as the Christian. Sorry. No. So we pick... Wait a minute. No, that's right. Sorry, my apologies. So Webster's 1A is what I spoke from Justice According to Natural Law. That's where that's found. But you won't find it in the internet version. But it is in the book, the hard copy. Right, so we are speaking of the prodigal son as the Christian wasting his father's inheritance by using it in advance. He must go eat with the pigs. That's what they're doing if we don't reverse this. Are you getting that? We are speaking of the prodigal son as the Christian wasting his father's inheritance by using it in advance for his own pleasures and bullshit. He must go eat with the pigs. There is no debt in the present. See that? There is no debt in the present. So it's by being in the subset to this Anno Mundi as a calendar, the Gregorian, that we're in the past. We're in debt always. So we're classed as wasting our father's inheritance. Taking on a character, the fiction breaks the covenant with God, according to their system. Now, Abe Finkelstein said they were in it from the beginning of Church of Rome. Now, I think that was the eastern side first, but when you get into the battles between the Roman bloodlines and the Carthaginians, the actor equity is playing the character, the debtor. So the character that we're playing this play, as Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. The world. The character we're all playing is that of the debtor. All the world's a stage and no character is present. Equity is a part of nature. Fertilization is of nature. From year one, everything becomes the fiction. And then you can go to Wikipedia to get an insight into Actors Equity Association. They're there to make sure actors in Hollywood get recompense. But we're talking here about actors in general, are we not? In the play, we didn't even know we were in. Res. A particular thing of matter. A tract of land. Mother's uterus wall and amnion. Set aside for indigenous people in the United States and Canada. A reservation or a reserve. We are created in the waters of the womb, and when born we land. The placenta is the evidence of the creation, which is then cut from the baby and pinned to the cross. Now you can see and understand better why they're raising these indigenous people again. It's all a play, it's a big game. Because they're certainly not Christians, are they? Federal Reserve. All persons are held in the reserve pool. Federal means covenant with God, which is held in reserve. They're holding the covenant with God that you've forsaken and abandoned. That's what the Ark of the Covenant really is. It's the Ark, the shit show that they've got going. So people are running around looking for this fucking thing. I mean, originally it was the Ark of the Contract in the Egyptian. But the Egyptian were copying in a lot of sense what were going on in Babylon, because that was an earlier system. And there's the bondage side of Egypt. But remember, these Egyptians at that time, they would actually, the Neteru had actually took over Egypt as well. So it was just spreading into. And so the bondage of Egypt in the Jewish law really is recognizing that you don't want to be the character, that you've got to take your account from zero, from the womb, and present yourself as whole. Federal 1640 is a theological term in reference to covenants between God and man. From French federal, an objective form, from Latin foedus, genitive foederis, covenant, league, treaty, alliance. From pi, bohides, suffixed form of root, behead, to trust, confide, persuade. Reserve, to set aside, to hold back, to retain, to hold over a future time. Yeah, a future time in the present, because your class is in the past. To make legal reservation. The amnion, part of the consecrated elements, is what they're holding, and they class as your covenant with God that you've forsaken. So at the Eucharist for future use. And that future use is the Noahide trust. Agent. An agent is required to secure a role which we play in a court. The court can be seen as the principal, be that the King's Court, a courtyard, a law court, a legal court. Courtyard, you know, whatever you want to go. They're all courts of some description. But an agent is required. It's all theatre for us to act the character. The agent sets up the invite, the summons, the draft, etc., in which we can be the actor. The play would be that of a Christian under the Passion of Christ, in which the character is to be executed. The death of Jesus pays for all sins. You get that? Sin defines as debt. Onshore equity is recognised by the court. All charges are dropped. Volunteer. We volunteer to act as the character, but equity does not aid the volunteer. The sin will not be forgiven. You must invoke the equity, which is the time in the womb, or the ruling will be for the greater good. All the goods placed into the one pool. Which in this system is the public pool, the black mass. You have to evidence your time in the womb to claim the equity, the Eucharist, or the Jesus they hold on deposit. Author. One could claim that the Society of Jesus are the authors of this mimic system, and yet the Jesuits act for the Prussian system, which in turn acts for the priest of Mithra Helordin from Persia, specific to old Iran. That's how I've come to understand it. So it's not the Jews just playing the part. It's not the Muslims, they're playing the part. It's not the Christians, they're acting their part. So to the Buddhists, everybody. But specifically, we're speaking about Western culture. Luke 5:31 KJV, and Jesus answering said unto them, they that are whole need not a physician. Whole. You become whole when you become one. Atonement with your equity. You are all present and accounted for. Of one mind, no longer lost to the past. You are accounting for the time in the womb. Half. You are selling yourself short. You are not whole. You are thus encouraged to eat of your own flesh. The body and blood of Christ. Ooh. Yeah. do that ritual, and what are you doing? Reasserting the fact that you have. And there is a link to the Hebrew calendar conversion. Get savvy with that, it's interesting. So you know where you're at, and you know where you've been. Every birthday you go back to the beginning, chasing your tail, the Ouroboros, a constant rebirth into infancy. In essence, they never outright lie, but tell a tale using words and concepts we fail to understand. It is the greatest story ever told that requires the omission of critical thinking. So it only works when you cease to use critical thought. Everything that we've had in the 20th century has been about removing you from critical thought. To swoon in emotional bullshit, in fantasy, to the point people think males can have babies. What utter fucking shit. But that's failing to apply critical thought. And this is the degree to how they've managed to capitalise on that omission. Evolution can be seen as fertilisation in the water landing in the swamp. And you're on the table all messy. And then you slowly as you grow, you're becoming upright, to become a grown-up. If you ever achieve it. When we claim the image of God, we turn ourselves upside down. Think about that. We don't want to be the image of God, do we? When we are present in the whole, full in our DNA or biology. Now, let's see how this plays into this new system that they're setting up with the UN. In the UN handbook, right now, the latest one, on the birth of a product, it says, live birth. The complete expulsion or extraction from its mother of a product of conception. Not birth. Yeah, it's a product of conception. Again, showing you that the measure on the Anno Mundi is at the conception. Irrespective of the duration of pregnancy, which after such separation breathes or shows any other evidence of life, such as beating of the heart, pulsation of the umbilical cord, or definitive movement of the voluntary muscles. Whether or not the umbilical cord has been cut or the placenta is attached, each product of such a birth is considered live-born. All live-born infants should be registered and counted as such, irrespective of gestational age or whether alive or dead at the time of registration. If a live-born infant dies at any time following birth, it should be registered and counted as a death. You know, why did they say you're born into sin? They must look after you. Now, that's the data, but as I was going through this, I started to look at these images again, and they started to just take on a different... You see, now this is an old Sumerian flip of the Anunnaki. Now, when you get into that, you've got this king guy, emperor, and he's symbolising himself sat on a box full of demons. Yeah, so he's controlling the demons. Now, Inanna, who's one of the lowest forms of this feminine, also has this rod and this circle. So I would say that has some kind of connection to the one that keeps these boxed, like Solomon did. So I'm wondering, what is this here? Is this symbolic? There's got the cross. You've got a portal. Is this them capturing the essence of your godly life? And you've got three kings here, not sure what to make of that. You've got one column. You've got the moon, the sun, and a star. Or two of them here. Alexander the Great is sat on a similar thing to this. He doesn't hold this implement. And his left arm is up in the air. So I don't know what that's symbolising. But I think we're on the right track. Now again, you go back, you've got Zoroaster depicted with the wings. And again, the same image. The cross. And there we go again. The moon. Now this is where it gets a little bit... This is Achaemenid Empire of Ahura Mazda. Faravahar symbols, Zoroastrianism, Persian symmetry material. Okay. Now, take note of this wiggle, these two lines, left, right, and then these squiggles at the bottom. Sigil of Lucifer. The light bearer. He's nicking the light. Is there a significance there? I think so. And of course, the one who's going to bring the system in for this, the mark, if you mirror image the X, you get that. Conjecture, of course, gentlemen and ladies. Now, Roma-Persian Empire. Here's its old symbols. The Persian Empire. Look at this double eagle. Mongols. Persians. They've took over Rome a long time ago and nobody's been the wiser. And this is Cyrus the Great's sigil. And who is being raised as Cyrus the Great today, the emancipator of this priesthood? Donaldo the Trump. Understand symbolism and we'll understand the game, is what's said. And this is the tomb of Cyrus the Great. Very reminiscent to that creature you saw in The Exorcist. Remember that demon from the Sumerian demon? Is it not? What have our priests been up to for the last 1,000 years? Because they really haven't seen this, have they? I am Cyrus. Cyrus the Great of Persia. The Donaldo. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, that endeth the Sunday sermon. It's horrific, really, when you think about it, because that's exactly what they've done. That's the root of all our seekings, our bedazzlement at not getting where we needed to go, because we weren't understanding the game. Where are you guys on this? Let's have a look at you. Oh my word, you have been busy. Okay, so I still don't understand why they, toxic, well. John says, hey, you okay, mate, to somebody. Evening, Sean, good evening. Says, Gordy, good evening, Gordy. Ulick McGee says, I'm digging it. Good. Glad you're here, Ulick. Untitled says, conception after 6 to 7 days before fertilisation. Fertilisation and conception are two different meanings. Conception is when it comes in. And now I said my youngest, I felt that when it happened. That was a strange feeling. But you knew, it shot in. Anno Domini 224 becomes Anno Lucius 6024. Okay, I'll have to look at that. Anno Lucius, I'll look into that because I'm not sure what you mean there, matey. Thanks, Profiler. Pinned on the cross, was it in the post office? State your claim by nailing it to the post. Lex says, evening Sean and all evening Lex. Anthony says, interest in the placenta in my case broke up and didn't follow naturally by my mum's account. She had to go to surgery after I was born for the removal of the fragmented placenta. Still take it, matey. Still take it. Remember they're registering an event. And as it got into that, the UN description, just have a look at that again to better understand what they're saying. Nuvo Olaredo, Alex, thanks. Good evening, I didn't know that, I will have to look it up. Hi Sean, thanks for the gravy, says Solomon, miss you, are more than welcome. Profiler X, Precarious, Philly Day, representative of the God and Son of God. In Roman numerals, there's a value of 666. Natural Law says Untitled, yep. Jenison and Mick, let's also look at the brain here as well. I promise to pay the bearer who's representing the character Jesus pinned on the cross, life in the past, yep. Jerry's trying to make the thing, exactly. Nouveau Laredo, Jerry, have you seen Bill Donahue channel has some interesting interpretations? Jerry says Nouveau, yes, and was only referring to him to someone else the other day. I watched him some time back. Untitled says, Genesis 2:2, on the seventh day God ended his work, he made zygote stage. Genesis 2. Untitled, Genesis 2:7, the start of the conception, zygote landing, implanted a conception. The church claimed due diligence of the unborn, not the zygote. Diligence of the unborn. Are you sure you don't mean the born? Jammy Vicious, Jammy Vicious, good evening to you. Salutations, the cathedral organ pipe, like those large chimneys that were not ever burnt in, are known as labial flues. Well, I mean, a lot of them, you don't build them anymore. They really do resonate some proper stuff. Like I said, you have to see there's a demarcation. And once the Solomons got into this, it changed everything. It changed everything. And they've been clever. Nouveau Laredo, thanks Sean, share the link. No worries. Anthony Moscow. So the chief cornerstone the builders rejected would be the Father, Creator God. Interesting, Anthony, yeah. I want my missing placenta back. No, you could to claim the equity of that period. And you will not do it using the dates in the Gregorian or the Julian. But if you want to get right into the present as far as the Mithras concerned, we'd have to find their calendar. Courts like to deal with you in REM, so rebut all. Solving this. My paternal bloodline stops with me because I don't have any offspring. Have you got brothers and sisters though? Untitled, Life of the Mixed Stargate, the path to the present from the past. You are the crowbar to unpin the truth. Jay says, yes, it all makes sense. Good stuff. Jerry says, and what does it say on the birth certificate about stillbirth? Check the certain C. Yes, it's making a lot of sense. Good. Set off or Seth off. Ah, interesting. Interesting, yeah. The ISIS theory. Because ISIS, apparently, they say, comes out of Sumer. And she's playing around with a dead cock. Yes, geez, inflation, yeah, I've got that. I wish I was taught this as a child and had it drummed into me for years, and I would. Well, this is the thing, we would all. They took away Latin, they took away grammar. Back in the day, if you had the snout, you could find this out, and the gates, the doors would open. Our states and systems have been captured by the enemy. And they've took Latin, they've took grammar, and made everybody thick. Bedazzled you with nonsense. You watch that Abe Finkelstein. Now that you've seen this, watch that interview again. Because Abe Finkelstein's being genuine. He's telling it as it is. It's the other guy that's a twat. Thinking he's coming from an higher moral stand. And the guy doesn't know his ass from his elbow. I'm in a wheel pill right now, says Profiler X. Yeah, well, so were we all when we started to really get a grip of this, you know. If I knew then, yeah. It gets deep, it does. It's pure greed. I want my great ancestors to take back what they've thieved. Funny them politicians of their states, all groups. Well, do they? Diplomats do. But I'm not so sure politicians do. I mean, they're idiots, aren't they? Useful idiots, as they call them. As they call soldiers. Useful idiots. You know? Show them an enemy, off you go. Show them an enemy, say, go, they're gone. No thoughts of their own, nothing. That's what they call them. Allegorical skullduggery, in my honest opinion, absolutely. But isn't it down to us? You know, it's on us. What are we interested in? It's usually shite. I mean, how many people have got off onto this alien stuff? The reptile stuff. and all the pish that comes out of this MK Ultra system that so many people have picked up because it's fantasy. And people like fantasy because seeking the truth is fucking hard. And it's boring. I mean, the amount of data that I've had to sift through in since 2008 when I really started getting into the law side of things. It's fucking ridiculous, but most of it is garbage that you don't need. It's all there to just fill your head. And it just keeps you off, down all the paths, here, there and everywhere. And, yeah, I mean, like John Harris, he's not dead. Did his gig, and then they let him in. But remember, they let him in. He didn't do it himself. So the tosses. All of them. Civitas Maxima City. As long as we play the game, we're complicit. We're volunteering. We're actors. We're acting the debtor character. Can we download this show? And you will be able to download it. I'm sure once the video complete, all the links will be available. Yes, absolutely. Mark, he will post it. Yep. Cheers, guys. All present say aye. Yes, resident says over miss. Jerry, son of mate, when I was a sperm, I had a lot to learn. Yeah. Well, they make sure we drink from the cup of forgetfulness, don't they? Can I have your name and address, please? Thank you for your cooperation. We were equipped only with the memory of building blocks, over missed. Block, rather. Reserve residual. So even though Jesus paid my debt, I still owe because I... Where's that gone? It was shot up then. Where is it? So even though Jesus paid my debt, I still owe because my parents volunteered me with my birth certificate. But the birth certificate is the evidence of the fact that they've took the placenta and stuck it your... Because basically that's where the chromosomes, your genetics are, and your dominion rights to land and property. They've took that, held it in trust. And we're coming back all the time as in the Christian calendar. The presumption and assumptions are right. The power is designated the assumption and presumption. They carry on. They're in honour. Oh, it keeps flicking up. Where are we? So even though Jesus paid... Yep. So the Doodah, New Covenant, written agreement or promise identity for the one who took the mark. Yeah, pretty much. It's caused a schism in your biology. Is now not necessarily in sync with the biology that they've got in the pool. Bondage cast aside now, you know, but you're classed as an idolater. I just thought they solved me. It's the sperm whale, the fisherman during the alleged eclipse. We had the whale of Jonah appeared. Nouveau Laredo untitled, and 19 is the Jesus number. Anthony says, so the whole dead gig or passed away way back to the past to take you away from being all present and accounted for. Yeah. Even before that time, Claudia had said that a cleansing of the twins was arriving, cleansing the lungs. Untitled says, you need to reconnect to the placenta by stating your notes to DNA. You, the breathing. To be present. For I am one life without fiction, first before others, all present and accounted for, from fertilization to the last breath. Jamie Vicious says, Pazuzu. Or Jeremy Vicious, rather. Jerry says, brilliant, Sean, good. I'm glad you got that, chaps. Mirror image of the X is the sigil of Saturn. Well put together. Thank you. That connects a lot of things for me. Thanks, Sean. You're welcome, chaps. Is the middleman X. I await the link to the article, boss. You will get it, sir. Great info. Nice one, Paul. Great job. Brother only had a daughter, sister. Only had a daughter, sister. Had a son. But the paternal bloodline passes through males only. Doesn't matter me or China. It's the gene pool they've got from the mother. You came from mother. I'm the youngest. Okay. Cord equals the cut, X middleman, the cut. The umbilical cord connects the baby to the mother's placenta, X1X. Cord equals cord. Rees-Mogg does show name and shame. Rees-Mogg does show name and shame. Well, I've done. Only worthy will grasp what they need to, exactly. Is how I feel about it. That's right. Must have in it. Yeah, most people it's just going to wear the fucking heads. They won't accept it because it's going. Well, that's fine. It's spiritual war after all. It is three kings like in the Bible. So the next game now we've got to hit the root of it. Now we're going to have to formulate a system of how we actually communicate this in paperwork. So as I've said, any help anybody can give me. If you want to give me direct to my bank account, just send me an email. I'll send you my details. Just send it as a gift or a donation, and then it's written that way. And I can carry on giving it the energy and effort that it needs, because it's just quite ridiculous how much energy you've got to put into this just to come out with little tiny little bits to copious amounts of words. But I'm not doing it on my own, and that's the great thing about it. It's a good team we've got together, and it's clearly working very bloody well, I have to say. So I really strongly suggest go back to Abe Finkelstein's video as well, now that you've got this stuff in your mind, because you'll understand it in a different way again. You'll understand what Abe's telling you, because he's being straight. You might not like what he's saying, but he's being straight. It's the other guy that's being a tosser, thinking he's better and bigger and smarter and brighter. He's the one that comes out as a complete dick. You know what I'm saying? So, well worth to go back to Abe once you've got this stuff in your mind properly, and you'll change your mindset, and you will really start to. I mean, the concepts that we've had to look at, to negate, is phenomenal. Phenomenal just to get to this grasp, you know. But each time you learn something else, you think, oh, what I've done before, it's not quite right, but that's the game. That's the way the game works. I've got it on my website, and I'll put it under here as a link, June. Alright, I'll put everything you need up under this after. So the Accord, yeah. Well, apparently the 193 countries have approved it. Now, I don't think they've signed it yet, but it's been approved. I know they're meeting again at the end of May to the 2nd of June, I think. And I think that's the period when it's going to be signed off. Keep your eyes on it, chaps, because you can see they're already pushing it out there with this nonsense. You don't want it. Okay? This is why they're obsessed with it. They need it to shift everything into that new Noahide Ark of the bitch. And on that bombshell, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining. Thanks for paying attention. I hope you've got something for it. I hope you have a good week. It's supposed to be nice and sunny. Get out in that garden. Get some sun on your skin. And I wish you all a good week, and say till the next time.
prodigal.